this promises to be an interesting one. First of all, because as you can see, we are looking at ToyWorld's Orionvil, which is a notoriously tricky transformation, at least from its day. But also, it's interesting because I've changed my lighting setup. You might be able to tell because the lighting probably looks better than in previous videos. It's one of those things where I wanted to make things easier on myself in terms of the filming setup and everything, and not be super cramped, etc. But you just can't replace proper lighting, even if it's awkward to shoot around. So for at least the time being, I've gone back to my old lighting setup with diffusers and all that. So yeah, we'll see how long I can stand doing this. But to the point, the actual point of this video, today we're looking at ToyWorld's Orionvil, which is a Nemesis repaint of their Orion figure. And that figure is just old ToyWorld's version of an IDW Optimus Prime. And once I decided I was collecting Nemesis Primes, this was a figure that was on my short list, and it took a while to get a hold of one, mostly because it doesn't get posted on eBay that often, and when it does, it usually is absurd prices, but I managed to get one for an okay price. And I am, of course, kicking myself for passing up the opportunity to get it when BBTS had it on sale a few years ago for a ridiculously good price, but whatever. Anyway, here we go. Here is Orionvil, and as tends to be the case with Optimus Primes that have been given the black repaint treatment, it works better in these colors, not just because I prefer this color scheme, even though I would argue it is objectively superior. I say that with a little bit of sarcasm. But in addition to that, there's the fact that having all of it, or most of it, be one color, in this case black, means that a lot of parts that otherwise might stand out are far less noticeable, which to me is a huge deal. We'll see this in some of the other Nemesis Primes we look at as the month goes on too, but like one thing right off the top, literally, is right there you've got the back of the robot head just chilling right there. And because this is black, the robot head is black, it's nowhere near as obvious. Whereas on the regular figure with the Optimus Prime colors on Orion, the cab is red and the robot head is blue, so it stands out more. So I really like how, in most cases, Nemesis color schemes do end up improving the cohesiveness of the vehicle mode and sometimes robot mode designs, because you don't have clashing colors that often. Instead, you just get nice solid black with, in this case, some really nice metallic reds in a few places, and these metallic teals down here, some kind of gunmetal down here, and then well, these aren't silver accents, but there's just some nice coloring going on around this figure, and it's pretty simple, but like it's just enough. There's just enough going on here that really helps to keep it from looking too mundane. And it is the IDW-based truck design with the wing on top, and as you can tell, this thing actually rolls really, really well. I'm back here. It rolls really well, and he's got his gun pegged onto the back. We'll deal with that later. And it's a nice truck mode. It looks the part. We will see, comparison-wise, how it continues to look the part later. There are some things about it that are a little different, but I like this, and it's nice and solid too. And that solidity is kind of a double-edged sword. We'll get to that when we get to the transformation, though anyone who is familiar with this figure or the mold already knows what to expect here. But this is a cool figure, and it feels good too. It feels very I don't know how to put it. There's just something about classic third party, like back when third party was still in its infancy type figures, that I think I need to readjust this again, that I think we don't get that anymore. It's like now it feels like third-party companies are trying to make, when, you know, in larger scale anyway, larger scale third-party companies are trying to make collectibles, whereas this feels more like it's from an era when they were trying to make toys. And I think that's better for me anyway. Anyway, here is Orionvil with the usual size comparisons. Get these out of here and get Burnout in here in a second. Come here. There we go. There he is with Burnout. And as you'd expect, definitely bigger than Burnout. Because, you know, bigger, chunkier. That's just how these things are. So there is Burnout. We'll bring in the Siege mold. So I'd say vehicle bulk-wise, this might be roughly liter size, or maybe a little bit bigger. Like modern liter, I don't know. I don't know how to qualify these things. It's all objective anyway. Or objective. It's all subjective anyway. But we got to do this comparison too. Bring it in. Generation Toys, Nemesis Colors Op X. Because I still really, really like this figure. One of my favorite Nemesis Primes in my collection. And of course, we're bringing him out because it's another IDW Optimus Prime design. And you can see some similarities between the two. The grille that's split down the middle, the vague assortment of like the lights and stuff on the front of the cab, as well as the bumper, are very similar. It is a little bit like, I like having the silver visors with like sun. I don't know what these are, but I don't know what these are officially called. But like, it's nice. Like, I like having the silver up here. You don't get that here. The side mirrors are clearly there, and you get these extra like striping bits along the sides, which you don't get on Orionvil. But for the most part, same truck, and they both they pull off the same look, but using different aesthetics. And I like that. It makes them feel even more their own, like they're each their own thing, which I like because it gives me an excuse to hang on to both of them. All right, let's get you out of here and bring in our final and most essential size comparison. Here is Orionvil with the duck tank. Now, before we robot this guy up, if you like this video or any other video that I've done on the channel and you'd like to support me, I do have a Ko-fi or Patreon. Links to both at the end of the video as well as down in the description. Otherwise, you can always do the typical YouTube thing of like, comment, share, subscribe. Now, to transform this guy, it's actually not a difficult transformation. You just have to be mindful of a lot of tabs. So, to start, I'm going to disconnect the gun, and rather than plugging in down here, it's actually tabbed into the back here. Just want to give that a little wiggle, and you can see there are the two tabs that tab into the slots in the back of the gun, and then this we'll just put off to the side. Now, I'm going to kind of angle this up for one thing. I want to disconnect the bumper, and you do that by pulling down. So pull down on the bumper, and there are these tabs here that plug up into here. So pull that down, swing this down, and while we're here, we can fold these in. And this will just kind of sit down here for now. Now, the trickiest part is untabbing all the stuff going on up here. So I'm going to try to zoom in so you can see what I'm doing. First thing you want to do is you actually want to push down on this panel here. Push down and pull back. Actually, no. First thing you want to do is disconnect the stuff up here. I'm sorry. So yeah, first thing, you want to pull down here to separate these tabs so you can take this flap and fold it back. We'll do that on both sides. We want to loosen up as much as we can before we start untabbing the front. So pull down, swing that out. Now, on this side, these panels actually tab into the wheel well in a couple places. So you want to pull down. You can see there's a tiny tab here that tabs in there and a thicker tab here. So you want to pull down to loosen that up. With that loosened up, now push in on this panel, which will allow you to kind of pull this out a little bit. So you want to push in and pull out. And that should actually give you just enough clearance to clear this tab from the grill and get around this tab up here. And now this folds in and around like that. And same deal on this side. Just want to kind of push in while also pulling back. Well, actually, no, first, again, you want to make sure to kind of pull this down. Then push in while pulling back. That should disconnect things from here. It's being a little tricky. And this is the main problem with this figure, is just getting all of these initial tabs unplugged without things snapping. I've transformed this thing several times in the last day or two in preparation for this video, and it's really not bad. It's just getting these tabs to clear is a little tricky. I'm gonna pull out the spudger. I was thinking I could do it without the spudger, but oh well. Let's push down, pull, and separate out. There we go. I think what was happening was the there we go. The wheel well was kind of pushing up as I was. It was a matter of leverage. But anyway, collapse that down. And the last bit that's really that's a little tricky is getting the windows done, because there is a tab sitting behind the grill here. I find what works best is to just kind of pull down on the grill, pull up on the window until you can see that tab, and then start pulling out. It's definitely your flexing stuff. Well, here we got this side. So you're flexing stuff, but it is doable. And then you can fold this out the rest of the way. And it should be easier now that the other window's done. So bring this down, pull down, push up. Not sure why this side's giving me trouble when the other side came so easily. There we go. And open that up. Okay, now we've got all this going on. We will deal with the legs last, I think. And we'll also zoom out now. Okay, now, just because this will probably happen later, but I'm going to do it anyway now. So I want to take this black panel here, fold that back a little bit, and then this window's on a slider, so that just kind of slides back. It doesn't click into place, but it slides back. What will become the arms, these chunks back here unplug from these panels in the center here. There's actually a gray peg, which I don't think you can see right now, but we pull this out. There you go. You can see the gray peg that's plugged in there. So pull that out. You still want to pull down on the wheel well because there is that little tab you got to be wary of, but pull that out and that will get this whole mass separated. And now we can extend the arm, rotate it 180 degrees, and this is because in order to get the arm situated properly, you need to take this bit here and it shifts up on like a double hinge. Not double hinge, it's hard to explain. It's a double rotation. There's one here and there's also one below that. So it allows the whole thing to shift down for truck mode so that this lines up, and then shift up for robot mode. So you want to shift it up and you want to have the bicep rotated like this because that gives you the clearance you need to rotate this panel 90 degrees. Once that panel's rotated, you can rotate the arm in place, open up this door, get the fist out. This one is very tight on this figure, but it does go. So rotate this out, close that back up, and that's pretty much it for the arm. We'll come back to it, but we're mostly done. I'm just bringing this out for clearance, but you don't have to do that. And then this panel, it kind of pulls up slightly to give it that angled look from the IDW design. And same deal here. Want to unplug this section from that gray peg, pull down here to clear that tab, and then bring this chunk out, straighten out the arm, shift this whole assembly up, rotate the arm, and then rotate this 90 degrees, rotate the arm back, and this usually will kind of take care of itself as you're transforming it, but yeah. Actually, does this slide out more? So it looks like there's a slider there. I'll deal with that later. Anyway, open that, flip out the fist, close that back up, and for the sake of clearance, I'm just going to straighten out the arm and bring it out like that. And now we've got all this happening. Now this is actually, okay, we're getting close to my favorite part of this transformation. I legit think this is an amazing transformation, I guess, design for a third-party thing. First, gonna collapse this in. I find the easiest way to do this, because you need to get this peg on the back of this panel into this peg hole, is you kind of bring it in and peg this in, and this piece is on a slider, so you can peg it in, and then as you compress this in, that'll kind of settle into place. So bring that in. And same deal here. I'm going to try to keep it on camera a little better. So bring this in and peg this in as you're doing it, and then slide it into place. Okay, now comes the coolest part, and I mean that sincerely. You want to take the grill, and the grill pushes in. You can see there's this gap here. This grill actually, the whole thing pushes into the torso, and it collapses all the way in. Once it's collapsed in, these sections that were the wheel wells rotate up and over the grill, which is a little bit, clearance isn't the greatest, but it does go. And that collapses up. This same deal comes up, and you can kind of zoom in more. You can kind of see how it's like it's not quite clearance enough for it to go, but if you kind of pull up a little bit, and you want to be careful, grab this piece, not the tire, because the tires can unplug from the bigger pieces, but pull up and it will go over the grill piece, and then you just push it the rest of the way in. And if you've done it correctly, these gray pieces down here should be nice and flat, which will give you all the space you need to bring the camera up, to bring the torso up or waist up, however you want to call it, and line that all up, and that'll bunk into place. You can rotate the waist 180 degrees and bring this back up. And that gives us most of the robot. Now for the legs, you want to kind of bring these out a bit. These panels can go out of the way, and then you want to pull out on the wheels, and you want to rotate this assembly. I find it's easiest, you get a little bit more clearance by rotating it this way, not this way. So rotate it this way and kind of keep pulling back as you do, and that'll just barely clear. So rotate that around 180 degrees and then slide this back in. This panel unfurls, comes down, and then there's a peg here that pegs in here. And that's kind of it. This bit doesn't really peg in, but it sits in place pretty securely. Okay, I guess it tabs over these somehow, but like there aren't dedicated slots for it, so I guess it just kind of wedges over it. But what is pegging if not wedging? That's the sentence I said. Anyway, this panel now, I find it's best to pull this up first, bring this out, rotate it around, and it's a little tricky to get this tab here to clear the shin. You kind of have to rotate it, and then you kind of have to angle it, and it kind of, there's a bit of wiggle, but it does go. But anyway, rotate that around, swing it in, and it'll kind of sort of tab in to the shin. Then you take this piece, flip that out to make a heel, and take this piece and rotate it up to make a toe, and there's a leg. Actually, no, that's not a leg, I forgot. You also want to take this piece and slide it, and then take this knee piece, and it's on like a double hinge, kind of bring that down. Now that's a leg done. And then this leg, same deal. Just bring that up, slide this out, rotate it in the direction where you get a slightly more clearance. Slide it back in, bring this down, bring that in. Take the panel here, pull that up, bring it up, rotate it around, and around, bring it back in, hinge this down, bring out the toe, bring out the heel, and slide the leg over. And that is it for the lower body. Legs all done. For the last little bit, this is really simple. I'm going to just fold these panels in. They don't like tab in, but the joints are solid enough that they will stay just fine. So just fold those in. The arms, you want to make sure that they're pushed forward as far as they'll go. I do wish they actually tapped in going forward, but whatever. You can untab the vein spoiler, whatever section, and I am noticing, of all things, there are some stress marks showing on 3 of the 4 tabs holding this thing together, and some of those stress marks were not there earlier. So something to be careful of. I think it's just because the wind vein thing is constantly getting like bumped and knocked around during transformation. I don't really know of a way to avoid doing that. It's because you can't really do much with this until the shoulders are in place, so that is what it is. But anyway, you kind of want to simultaneously rotate this panel and rotate the wind vein. I find it's probably best to just hold it and rotate it, just so that you get things kind of off to the side, and it gives you a little more clearance as well. So rotate that. Now you want to shift this back, and you'll see this other gray peg now will come down. This peg is the one that was attached in truck mode. This peg was just kind of tucked into the panel, but you want to rotate it so that that peg is down, and that peg will go into this other peg hole, which is not showing up on camera. Go into this other peg hole right here on the shoulder. So swing that in and peg that into place. There we go. And once it's pegged in, you can also kind of do a little bit more adjusting on the wind vein spoiler thing. And this panel here folds in to just kind of change the profile of the wind vein a little bit. So same deal here. Take this, shift it down, and fold that in since I accidentally bumped it. So shift that down, bring this in to peg it into the back of the shoulder, and then just find a place where you want the thing to sit. And finally, going to bring the arms down, get them in a slightly more natural pose. And for the head, it's just tucked in right there. And despite what you might think, it's actually easiest to get this little tab right here, just above where the obvious light piping thing is. It's actually not too hard to hook a nail on that and pull back from there. And that gets the head out. That seems to be the easiest way to remove the head, because trying to pull from here doesn't really work, and there's nothing to really grip from here, and you do not have any easy access from back here because these panels don't give you any more space than this to work with. So just pull from there, should be okay. Pull it up, rotate it around, and there's nothing that locks this into place, but it frictions in pretty decently. And that's it. There is ToyWorld's Orionvil in robot mode. And this is a chunky design, but it's also a design that I think is really cool. There are definitely things about this figure that I wish were a little different. Like, it didn't need quite as many locking tabs in vehicle mode, and some of the some of the elements in robot mode could use extra locking. Like I wish the shoulders, like I said, I wish they locked in place in the robot mode configuration. In the truck mode, it doesn't matter because so much else is kind of tied to them, and it kind of kind of requires, that they stay in place. But like in robot mode, there's nothing keeping them from like shifting backwards and down. So like they can move like that. So like here, you can see here it's rotating from the proper joint, but if I don't press it forward, it rotates and ends up rotating the whole shoulder downwards. And it's just, I wish that was more of a locking mechanism. I wish there was a slightly more solid lock for these knee pads. It's small stuff. I wish this locked in because it can go back. It's not going to like sink so far down that you can't get the head out again unless you like really force it. But I do wish that this had something to kind of thunk into place a little more solidly. But really, it's come together pretty nicely, and like this is nowhere near as bad a transformation as 4 out of 4 tabs on this are showing signs of stress. Whatever. I mean, honestly, even if the tabs do break, hopefully they don't, but even if they do break, everything is solid enough in vehicle mode that I feel like it'll just sit together anyway and doesn't need to be tabbed. But I would like it if those tabs didn't break. But yeah, it's actually a really clean overall robot mode. Like, you don't really get any kibble on this guy. The bumper tucks up against the butt really nicely. This is supposed to be here. You get a little bit of kibble on the backs of the shoulders, but it's like it's so minimal and it compresses so close to the backs of the shoulders you don't even really notice it. I love how the wheels end up inside the shins, and I really love the stomach transformation. I mean, we've seen wheel wells become the midriff in like MP10 and other figures, but to have the grill itself push in and have these pieces form around it so that it's still the same grill. This is the same grill piece. It's just covered partially by these pieces, and that actually changes the shape of it. Like, that's genuinely brilliant. That is a wonderful transformation idea, and I kind of wish that more that more companies or figures that do this kind of robot mode would try something like that. Not that I have I understand the need for faux parts. I am nowhere near as about faux parts as some people, but that's just really cool. Like, Generation Toy version, which we will look at in the size comparisons, does the faux stomach thing and like the faux grill, and it's fine. I don't mind it. It looks good, but this also looks really good, and it's a really, like, this is just the fact that this is the actual grill of the vehicle mode is so cool. But yeah, this is a really nifty design, and I think, this figure, I understand the infamy, but I kind of, like, I don't know if it's just because so many other more complicated and worse third-party figures have come out in the intervening years. So, like, maybe my expectations have changed. Maybe this is something that would have appealed to me even back then. I don't know. But I feel like this figure, at this point, has kind of an unfair reputation for being a pain in the butt to transform. And it's really not. Once you know what tabs to look out for and how to kind of get things around them, it's really not bad. The plastic feels sturdy enough that it doesn't seem like it's going to break, and in a lot of cases, even if it does, there are so many tabs holding the truck mode together. I don't think it would really be a detriment to the figure. If anything, it might make transformation easier. So it's fine. Really, the only thing that bums me out about it is the tabs for the vane. I kind of wish that those were maybe a little shorter and thicker to just make them a little bit sturdier. And they don't need to be as long as they are. Because this, like, when the panels are together, this thing, I don't know, when the panels are together, like, this thing will kind of, it stays together on its own. Those probably could have been about half the length that they are, and it still would have been fine. Anyway, you get a lot more gray. To actually get back to talking about the design of this guy, a lot more gray with some extra teal, and this is it's just cool. You get some revealed colors, and these pieces, these panels were like flipped inside out and flipped around in truck mode, so like you get some new teal here, some new kind of grayish silver up here. These bits were kind of tucked to the insides of the legs, so you actually see the proper layered IDW looking shins, which I love. These shins, I'm pretty sure I said that in the Generation Toy versions video, at least one of them. But I love these shin designs. You get this kind of unsightly silver bit sticking out here, but I don't know, it's not as noticeable to me on the Nemesis version as it is on the Optimus Prime version. So, whatever. But you also get some metallic-y and gray painted details on the insides of the shins, which is really cool. Now you get the metallic blues around the waist. This hip skirt is extremely, like it's very floppy. It's fine, but it's just very, like, it wiggles a lot, and it's kind of like but you get teal on the forearms. This is from the side of the truck, but like still works. And of course you get all this wonderful midriff detail now with like the gray here and the metallic reds on the sides and the black. It just looks so good. And you get the layered windows in the chest. I like how these pieces slide out a bit or slide in a bit depending on which mode you're in, so it does adjust the shape a little, just a little bit. It's not as dramatic a shape change as some other IDW Prime designs, or some other figures based on this IDW Prime design, but it's still effective and very cool. And like I said, it's a very clean overall figure, just a little bit of kibble on the backs of the shoulders, and like that's pretty much it. So yeah, this is cool. I really like this. Now the head is something that I think people had issue with at first, and I guess I kind of get it because it looks a little puffy, a little bit roundy, but like I think it's totally fine. I mean, again, I don't know if this is because we've got so many other options now, or because I'm just built different, but the design of the head, like the sculpt is nice. It looks like an Optimus, or in this case, a Nemesis Prime. You get a little bit of extra molded detail around the mouth plate, which I think makes it a little meaner, which I think works. There is light piping that you're not really going to see given how the lighting setup is right now, but it does light pipe pretty well. Really, the only thing that bums me out about this head is I personally would have preferred if the eyes were painted so that they shone better, because they just look kind of dead unless you have light behind it. But also, I kind of wish they had painted like the head crest in silver or gray or something like that. It is kind of neat, though, how the way that these vents on the sides are sculpted, the light tends to catch them and kind of make them look like they're painted almost. So that's cool. Now, for articulation, as you saw, the head is on a swivel. It's not a ball joint, it is a swivel, but it does go all the way around, and you can, I guess, technically use this panel to look up a little bit. Like, it doesn't look too awkward if you push it back just a little bit, but you can't really look down. The arms, as you saw, the shoulders can go all the way around, but you do have to be mindful of the of that joint. Otherwise, it will end up rotating the shoulder down, and that's kind of annoying. They go in and out to 90. On a ratchet, you get a bicep swivel. You get 90 degrees of elbow bend, which the biceps are a little bit stumpy, but that's okay. It doesn't bother me too much. Also, these are on ball joints, so you can wiggle these around however you see fit. The wrists do rotate. You can also angle them up and down slightly because of the transformation, and then the fingers open and close. And we'll just keep the arms up for now. The waist does rotate. It goes around, but you kind of have to get, it seems to want to push the little butt plate thing out of the way as you rotate it, but you can just push it out of the way to do that, so it's not too bad. But waist goes all the way around, and if you really wanted to, you could use like a reverse ab crunch if you want. Only goes the one way, though. The hips, if you get the skirts out of the way, the hips can go forward to, well, you go past that. Problem is the knee pad hitting the hip skirt, but like you can kind of go around it. So the hips can go forward to 90. If the knee pad is in the way, then it's going to go up that far. Can go back that far, can go out to 90. Something I did notice, if you bring the leg back, you can't bring the leg out that easily. Things start crashing up here. And if you bring the leg forward, it's the same deal. Things start crashing up here. So you kind of have to angle it, and it's a little bit just tricky to get the angles right. So you can bring the leg out and forward, but like you have to do it in a certain order. So just something to be mindful of. You get a thigh rotation. You get a very stiff ratchet for the knee that goes to 90. And I believe this is a constant in all of these figures, just that very stiff ratchet. Also, the outward motion is a ratchet, but on this one at least, it doesn't seem to ratchet very much, which is fine with me, because that means I get a lot more control over like more subtle angles with the spread back there. So you get all that. And then for the feet, you don't get any ankle tilt, but you can rotate the toe. It can kind of go up a bit and point down. You can shift it because it's on like a swivel and ball joint, and you can kind of mimic ankle tilt with it. And the heel you can just kind of angle down, which can be handy for, you know, certain poses, but you don't really get any ankle tilt, but that's fine. It's not like, I think the illusion of ankle tilt is plenty for what this guy accomplishes, so it doesn't really bother me. And you also get his gun, which looks a little bit like the Ion Blaster, though I do think it's kind of interesting how traditionally, I believe, this, whatever shape this is kind of going the other way with the angle going back, but it's going forward in this design. I don't know if this is the IDW design or the ToyWorld design, but I just think that's kind of an interesting thing to note. I like the bit of teal up at the front there, and it's got red in the center. As far as I know, it doesn't actually have batteries, so I don't think there's any like light up feature, but it's got light piping in the center for some reason. I don't know. And there's a little peg that just pegs into the hand, and he holds it just fine. It's not like the most secure. It's not tabbing into place, so it can get knocked out of place, but it takes some effort. Like, it's not as bad as, say, the knockoff Generation Toy Constructicons. So he holds it just fine. This figure also has an axe, like an Energon axe. I honestly do not remember if this one that I have came with it, and I just don't care enough to go digging through my box of parts to see if it's in there. It's an Energon axe. Who cares? I mean, someone does, I'm sure. And to you who care, I am sorry, but yeah, I'm not digging through my through my box of stuff just for that. So we're just going to leave it with the rifle. And I also prefer doing that because the rifle has a place to store in the robot mode, or in the truck mode, rather. But yeah, that is all I've got on the robot mode. So let us start looking at some size comparisons. Bring in Buzzworthy Dinobot and Ova Prime. There's our Tall Voyager and Tall Deluxe stand-ins. Samus, and we'll bring in Burnout because there's plenty of room on screen. So there is how he stacks up there. This feels like, I want to say old school leader heights. I don't know. It's funny because, granted, I've had this guy for over a year now. Maybe not over a year. I think I got him this year, but like towards the beginning of this year. And the way everyone talked about this figure, I always got the impression that he was like too small or something like that. But then once I got him, it's like, no, he's actually pretty big and beefy, which is good. I like that. But yeah, it just kind of took me by surprise. And then here we go. Here he is with the Siege mold, which, again, I will happily state that this mold, I think, has gone sorely unappreciated over time. Like, we, as a collective collector base, I feel like most of us, myself included, gave up on this mold way too soon. Like, as soon as the Earthrise mold came out, we were like, Siege who? Tossed this one to the side, went with Earthrise, never looked back. And I need to make another video on this, but I want to spend like a bunch of time talking about just how wrong we were and how, despite everything, this mold is actually superior to the Earthrise molds as a toy. But that's for another day. Because for now, we actually need to bring this guy in and take a look at Orionvil with the Generation Toy OpEx mold. And yeah, OpEx is way bigger. No denying that. This guy is a much bigger figure, and it's having them both side by side. It's kind of like there are aspects to both that I think are really cool. There are certain elements to the Generation Toy version that I think are handled better, and there are legitimately certain design elements that I think are handled better by the ToyWorld. There's a simplicity to this one where, like, yes, it's tricky to transform because of the tabs, but the actual transformation is very simple. This guy's transformation is not overly complex, but it's also not simple. It is not a simple transformation. It is extremely effective, and I actually do enjoy doing it, but it is not. I don't think anyone would say this is like super simple compared to the G creation version of IDW Prime. Yes, but like that's not saying much. Like, I really like the difference in aesthetics, how it's clearly the same design for the character, but handled by different teams, different designers. Like, they've got different ideas when it comes to like what features to focus on and what to stylize and stuff. And I like that. This is the kind of thing that really makes me excited to do what I do when I collect, where I get like multiple different figures that represent the same character. I like having these alternate interpretations that sometimes vary wildly and other times are a bit closer to each other. But like, it's always interesting to me to see those design differences. Anyway, that's the Generation Toy version. And finally, because we gotta, here is Orionvil with the duck tank. And that does it for ToyWorld's Orionvil. And yeah, I feel like it's just, I really appreciate how this guy comes from an era when, you know, this was before third-party toys started getting overwrought with nonsense in terms of their engineering and stuff. Because as I said many times in this video, this is not a complex transformation. It's just a tricky transformation. The engineering is actually very simple, and in the case of the midsection, incredibly clever. One thing I want to do too before I forget. The gun is not blast effect compatible. It looks like it fits, but it does not actually peg in. So, no blast effects. You can plug it in up there if you want, but that's it. You are not going to get any blast effect use out of that gun, which is a shame. But this also predates blast effects, so whatever. But yeah, I legitimately really like this figure, and it's funny because I was thinking the other day, as of, you know, filming it relative to filming, I was thinking the other day how I might save this guy for last because that transformation is so involved. And then I was like, well, let me take him down and start messing with him and see if I change my mind. And yeah, like, I transformed him and was just like, oh, actually, this is fine. Like, it makes sense. I didn't end up looking up instructions or anything like that. I just went from memory from the last time I touched him. And it was fine. It was completely fine. So yeah, like I feel like the flack this design gets for being a pain to transform at this point at least, just feels unwarranted or feels undeserved now. Again, that could be because of how things have changed over the years. This guy did come out before third party turned into the sometimes obnoxiously complicated nonsense that it is. But yeah, I'm glad I messed with him again, because this is legitimately, it's a cool figure that is actually, like, I'm gonna say it, I enjoy transforming this figure. I do. It is a little bit fiddly in a couple of places, and once you get, like, getting the whole tab thing is a little bit tricky at first, but like once you get it down, it's a legitimately enjoyable transformation. And again, super clever how some of it works, and I appreciate just how it's actually very simple at its core. But anyway, I feel like I've reiterated the same points in this video like 6 times now, so I'm going to stop talking. So that's all I have to say about ToyWorld Orionvil, and by extension ToyWorld Orion, which, again, I feel like this color scheme works better. But what do you all have to say about this guy, or this mold, or this design for Prime? Whatever your thoughts, feel free to chime in down below. I always enjoy hearing from you all. Thank you, everybody, for watching, and next time, you guessed it, another Nemesis Prime.